So to get started, I'm Stephen Foote. I work for LinkedIn, and let's see, I wrote a book about learning to program, so I guess this is not the right audience for that book, so never mind. Let's see, if any of you read the description to my talk, you will know that I said I could juggle, so I'm just going to get that out of the way. And before I do that, when I was trying to learn how to juggle, it was a struggle for me, and my older brother could do it already. I finally got it. It clicked, and so I showed him. I'm like, hey, look at this, I can juggle. And he looked at me, and he's like, can you do any tricks? I was like, I can juggle. Apparently, as soon as you can juggle, you have to learn all these other tricks. So today, I am going to juggle a Rubik's Cube, and I'm not going to solve it while I juggle. Sorry. I'm going to juggle a harmonica, and big reveal, a piano. All right, here we go. Rubik's Cube, harmonica, piano. It is very hard with the lights. I think I just broke my kid's piano. They're going to be mad. All right, but this is a piano. I swear it's a piano. You can tell because it plays a song. You could listen to that all day. And it has keys. Can we get a close-up of the keys? There we go. There we go. The AV guy's like, how did I just do that? Yeah, I put that in my slides. All right. So there are problems with this piano. And we're going to see those as we get into this talk. So it's a piano. If we were going to make a component out of this piano, it would probably look something like this, right? But then, what if we want a different song? Not that, again, all day long. But what if we wanted some jazz? We got to add an option for some jazz, and now it plays jazz. And let's see, what if that jazz is just not in the right key? What is every software developer's favorite key? C#. It's escape. Okay, that's every Vim developer. Okay, so C is every software developer's favorite key, unless you work for LinkedIn and you were recently acquired by Microsoft, in which case it is C#. Okay, and now we got our song. It kind of feels sad. Let's make sure it's not a minor song. So we got another option there. And now I could really listen to this for at least 10 minutes, maybe more. And this piano actually, let's turn it up. This one goes to 11. That's a movie reference because we're in a movie theater. All right, and finally, let's see, what else? Speed it up a little bit or slow it down, whatever. We've got a lot of options here, and here comes the harmonica. The piano man tells us, you guys may recognize this song. Right. Thank you. So Billy Joel, the piano man, tells us that John at the bar is a friend of mine. He gets me my drinks for free. Therefore, a piano must have, at least optionally, a cup holder. So this piano may have a cup holder. And now we've got, this is a piano. And not just any piano. This is a piano that can do everything. And you think about this in the terms of component development. It can do everything that we explicitly tell it to do. If we want it to do something else, we add another option, and it gets ugly. And it gets uglier and uglier, and eventually you've got 45 lines of code just to define your piano, and it still doesn't play the song you want it to play. So what's the problem? The problem is that pianos play sounds and musicians play songs. Or in other words, the components have too much responsibility. The solution is delegation of responsibility. The less power you hold as a component, the more powerful you become. And we're going to see that today as we build a TypeAHead. Pretty much the rest of this session is going to be me live coding. So if you have anything that you can throw at me, like rotten tomatoes, again, movie theater, get ready because it's going to get ugly. Before we get into that, let's design our TypeAHead. And when I say TypeAHead, autocomplete, you type in a box and some results show up, right? So I'm going to say that the essential features of a TypeAHead, there are 3. It needs an evented input. It needs a navigable list of selectable results, and it should be accessible. And now there's a lot of features that come with TypeAHeads that I believe are non-essential, and here's some of those. I call them kitchen sink features. I'm not even going to read that list, but you can see a lot of these are assumed to be absolutely essential to TypeAHeads, and I'm going to say these are not essential. These are the responsibilities that we are going to delegate. So again, essential features only. However, all of the kitchen sink features still need to be possible. If we build a TypeAHead that can't do anything, it's useless. So they still need to be possible. So let's break down these features and find their different parts. We've got an input, a list, and some results. All right, into the code. I am going to be using, that's small. I'm going to be using, wow, this is, I think, the largest screen I have ever coded on in my life. Can you guys see the text in the back? This is so cool. This is such a big screen. Okay, all conferences should be in movie theaters. All right, so we have here the TypeAHead component. We have a TypeAHead input, a TypeAHead results list, and a TypeAHead result. So that's where we're at right now. This is not going to do anything yet, but this is what our API is going to look like. Some things to note about this API. We've got an onChange event on the input. We've got onSelect and onHighlight on the result. And we provide all of the results. So the TypeAHead doesn't know anything about that. If there are results, then the TypeAHead shows it. Okay, so let's move on a little bit and see. Let's create the components and see what it'll look like. And we're going to do that by checking out a different branch. All right, and now I have a different TypeAHead. It's got some dogs and some cats. I am not necessarily a cat person, so those are the only cats I could think of. So let's see if this thing will render something for us. All right. Okay, so it's rendering what we have, but it doesn't do much else yet. So making progress. We've got the input, we've got results in a list. One thing to notice about the result list is that we have things that are not results in that list. We've got an H3 saying this part of the results list is dogs, another H3 saying this is cats. Already this is something that's not easy to do with a normal TypeAHead. All right, now let's go ahead and give this TypeAHead some styles. And now it looks a little bit better. If I hover over things, looking good. All right. Now, the next thing we need to do is navigate the list. So to navigate the list, what we're going to do is go ahead and get into the actual code. At this point, it doesn't really have much. It's just really, and I apologize if you're not like really into React, but I think that this will be pretty, this isn't a very React heavy talk, but it did demonstrate things the best, I think. So there's not much to these yet, so let's go ahead and add something. So there's going to be one result highlighted at a time, and we're going to be able to highlight the results using our arrow keys. So we'll say in the constructor for this TypeAHead component, we need to set up the highlighted index, and that's going to be the result that, that is currently highlighted. All right, and then the next thing we're going to do is we need to pass that highlighted index down into one of our children, and that child is going to be the results list. So we are going to do some React heavy stuff here, and we're going to loop through essentially each of our children and see if that child is the results list. All right, so if it's a child, and if the child.type is TypeAHead results list, then we are going to clone that child and add the highlighted index to it. And that is going to become a prop that gets passed into the results list every time. And we don't have to worry about, as consumers of this, we don't have to put that in here anywhere. It just goes automatically. So it's a component state that is invisible to the consumer. All right, so, and then if it's not result list, then just return. And we need to make sure that we know what we're comparing to. So add that there, and we'll save that and make sure that things are still rendering correctly. Okay, good, no errors. Let's continue. All right, the next step is to go into the TypeAHead results list, and we're going to do pretty much the same thing. We're going to pass this down to each of our children. So when I say this, I mean the highlighted index. So again, we're going to loop through the children, and this time we want the TypeAHead result. And now it gets a little bit trickier because we want to know if that particular child is highlighted, and the child doesn't care about the highlighted index, it just needs to know if it's highlighted. It also doesn't know which index it is in the list. So we are going to count up the children. And then we will know if we're at the right child, if this child is highlighted. Okay, so at this point we know if we are If we're one of the children, we know if we're highlighted. So let's go ahead and jump into one of the TypeAHead Result children. So let's jump into here. Those of you who know React well are going to probably think I have an error here. But it turns out I'm using a custom element. That dash tells React to use class instead of class name. So who knows why, but yes, that is actually how it's supposed to be. So if it's highlighted, then we'll add the class highlighted, otherwise nothing. So let's refresh, see where I'm at. Great. All right. So I didn't remember to import here TypeAHead Result for the comparison. All right. Okay, good. All right, so now we'll go back to here and just kind of change this and see if I say that the highlighted index is 1, does it actually, okay, we're showing that the beagle is highlighted. Excellent. So the wiring is all set up. We've got the highlighted index. Now we need to take the next step and capture the arrow presses. So if my focus is in that box and you can't see my keyboard, and I'm not going to be able to do that trick again because it was in my slides, but if I'm hitting the down arrow now, nothing's happening, up arrow, nothing's happening. So I need to go ahead and navigate the list. So the way that we're going to do that, first we're going to go into the input and we're going to add an OnKeyDown event on this input. And on OnKeyDown, we will check if one of the important arrow keys is pressed, and if it is, we will call this.props.arrow key pressed, which doesn't exist yet. And we'll pass that in as well so we know which way we're going. All right, so let's go ahead and add that method. So we'll do that here. And let's see what we call it, arrow key pressed. We'll call this navigate list. And bind it so we make sure we don't have any problems there. All right, and now we'll add that navigate list function. And that is going to call into the results list, same function, navigate list with the direction. Okay, now we need a reference to the results list from inside the TypeAHead component, so we'll grab that here. And all right, make sure everything still loads, and that's good. And now in TypeAHead, we should get an error. Let's see if we get an error because that method doesn't exist. Perfect, doesn't exist. So we'll add that method here. Navigate list, and okay. We should see the direction now. Arrow down, arrow up. So we're all wired up. Perfect. Okay, and now I'm going to skip writing the next bit of code because it takes a little bit of time. We'll just talk about it. All right, so now if I update, we should have a list that navigates. Awesome. So the only thing that changed here since the last time is when I navigate the list, we see the navigate list here, and I'm using the modulo operator so that it loops back around, and I have a map that tells me if it's arrow down, then move down the list or increase the index. If it's arrow up, move up the list, decrease the index. Okay, so one of the things that I talked about in the summary for this talk is that pure components are really important. So pure components are like pure functions, and a pure function is a function that, given an input, it always has the same output. And also, it doesn't have any side effects, so it doesn't mutate anything inside of it. So a pure component is pretty similar. Given an input, it has the same UI output, and it doesn't mutate anything. And so this is kind of important here because we could have taken this highlighted index and basically mutated it inside of the TypeAHead results list, and because that's where the actual action is happening. The TypeAHead results list knows where it's going. Oh, I did neglect one thing. I have to count the results, which is very similar to what I'm doing here, but it's useful to have it separate. So I count the results so I know how many results total I have to navigate through, so I know where to loop back around to the top. So the results list knows everything about this whole navigation, but the TypeAHead component itself needs to have that state as well for accessibility. And so if we pass the highlighted index into the TypeAHead results list and then mutate it inside of the TypeAHead results list, then things would go bad. It would get out of sync, and it would just be ugly. It would not be a pure component anymore. And so instead of mutating this highlighted index inside, we call this.props.update highlighted index, which is a method on here, which just sets the state of the highlighted index, which immediately gets passed back down into the results list. And so it's a kind of a roundabout way of getting there, but it's really essential to make sure that the TypeAHead results list remains pure. If we start mutating things inside of it, it will go downhill quickly. All right, so now we have updated the, we're navigating the list, which is great. And you can see as the list navigates, still typing things doesn't do anything, and selecting doesn't do anything. So the next thing was a clickable or selectable result. So the selecting the result is just a click listener. So we can look at that, add a click listener, and send it to the onSelect method. So we've got an onSelect method here. It says that the result was selected, puppy. So now if I click puppy, we see puppy here. So now that's working. However, if I arrow down and use the keyboard and hit enter, I do not see puppy. And that's not good. We want to be able to use the arrow keys as well for accessibility, as well as a TypeAHead just needs to do that. So let's make that happen. First thing we need to do for that is we got to know if the enter key is pressed. And then in the TypeAHead, we'll need to pass that in as well. And when the enter key is pressed, we'll just select whatever result is currently highlighted. So we'll add that method. All right. And that will be, again, calling into the results list, saying select the highlighted method, or highlighted result, sorry. And in the results list, we'll add that. And here's where things get a little bit tricky, because we need to know which result is highlighted, and we need to be able to call its select method. So we need a ref of each of the results. And all right. So, sorry, what? Close the array. Oh, yeah, not an array, but yeah. Other than that, can anybody see a problem with this line of code? This is Closures 101. If you don't see it, don't feel bad. I didn't either, and the debugging really bothered me. But by the time this ref method here is evaluated, if I don't keep an external reference of the index, then current index would always be whatever is the largest number because of that whole closure nonsense. So now we have a ref, and we can say select the highlighted index, and now we'll just need to move this into a different method. And put that there. Let's see how that works. Right, it isn't. Yay! All right, so those of you who are watching comfortably from your seats and not live coding, I hope you appreciate that in the last 20 minutes I wrote a TypeAHead. I did cheat a little bit and checked out some branches, but there is a TypeAHead here that navigates a list. And a lot of you are saying that is not a TypeAHead. It doesn't do anything when you type. Check it out, nothing's happening. And I will say that is true. However, that isn't an essential feature of a TypeAHead, and you'll see why in just a second. So now I'm going to go ahead and check out a branch that actually does something, and we will see all right. Now let's look really quick at this new version of a TypeAHead. So this TypeAHead now is going to be able to search all of the cities of Utah. This is the UtahJS Conference, and so all of the cities in Utah are searchable here. All right, let's see what it does. We've got the familiar TypeAHead component. The TypeAHead input has the onChange event with the TypeAHead input change method here. We'll get into that in a second. But that's what happens every time the input changes or the string is updated. We have the results list, and then we're going to map over the visible results in the list and add a TypeAHead result for each of those visible results. And on select, we will call results selected, which basically passes in the current result and it turns it into this selected city. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at TypeAHead input changed. So one of the things in the kitchen sink features list that I had is caching. And every time that I talk about, like, this is a great way to build a TypeAHead, people are like, that looks really great, but you should add caching. And I'm going to say, no, I'm not going to add caching, and this is why. As soon as I add caching, I have to decide what caching strategy I'm going to use. I have to decide when to bust the cache. I have to decide all sorts of things about caching that are really application-level features, and this is a library component. And so caching is in the application, so let's watch the caching happen. We update our component state to have results and visible results. Results is the cache, and visible results are the currently viewed results. So results is going to be used as a cache here. So if we have a string, then go ahead and check if the results cache has already cached that string. If it has that property, then grab the visible results from the cache. If not, then we're going to filter the cities. I'll show you guys what the cities look like. It's an array of objects, so not too interesting. So filter the cities with a regular expression on whatever string has been typed in. It's a very naive at this point TypeAHead. It does at least ignore case, but it doesn't do any fuzzy matching at all. But again, that is an application concern and beyond the scope of the time that I have. So let's see it in action. And then result selected, again, selects the city, sets the result as the selected city, and then clears out the visible results. So let's see, where are we? All right, cities of Utah. What's your favorite city in Utah? Laverkin. That's the first one I heard. All right, Laverkin of Washington County, settled 1897, population. Okay, I heard Lehigh as well. I live in Highland. Okay, so it works. Awesome. But what if we wanted to do something else? What if we wanted to see cities grouped by county? So let's see what that would look like. All right. So now it is almost the same, but we take our visible results and we reduce them into a new object that is grouped by county, and then we have a new method to render grouped county results. And that's basically just putting an H3 at the top and then doing each result in the county. Okay, so we've got all of the results grouped by county. Now, one of the things I want to mention about this is kind of cool is, okay, another city. We're in Tokerville. All right, I need more results. All right, so TO, you can see as I'm navigating the list that the counties, the county names are skipped. That happens automatically because the county names are H3s and not TypeAHead results. And so nothing extra needs to be done. If it's not a TypeAHead result component, then we're not going to navigate it. And it just works. It composes very nicely. All right. Now, what if we wanted to go a little bit further? I'm actually not from Utah. I grew up in Nevada. So let's say, and I understand that people from other parts of the country, namely the East Coast, basically think it's one big state over here. So they figure, if it's in the West, it's probably, Las Vegas is probably in Utah. Utah's in the West, right? So what if you're trying to find Las Vegas, you're searching in Utah, you can't find it. So this is a contrived example, but I think it makes an interesting point. So let's go ahead and look again. What we're going to do is put a TypeAHead inside of a TypeAHead, right? Inception, TypeAHead inception. So what we do is we've got our TypeAHead that we've seen already, and we render our grouped county results, and then if we have a current search of any length, there's not a selected city, and the visible results length is less than 2. Basically, if we don't have very many results, but we are showing results, and there's something typed into the TypeAHead, then let's go ahead and render the Nevada TypeAHead. Let's see what that does. That has a TypeAHead result so that it is navigable with the keyboard, and in that result, we have another TypeAHead with a TypeAHead input, TypeAHead results list, and then we've actually got loading happening here. So if the Nevada results are loading, then show a loading spinner, and if they're not, then render the results. And we actually also have an on highlight. So when this result is highlighted, then we're going to automatically put the focus into that new TypeAHead, right? So we have another set of cities, Nevada cities, a much smaller group. If anybody's ever driven through Nevada, which if you're in Utah, you've probably driven through Nevada, you know there's almost nothing there. Now that I left, there's really very little left in Utah. Okay, so let's see how this thing works. All right, Tokerville. Okay, let's try a Nevada city instead. You like that loading spitter, right? Okay, and it just works. So again, this is a contrived example. You don't probably want a TypeAHead inside of a TypeAHead result and another TypeAHead, and just keep going. If you go far enough, then you go into limbo, but you probably don't want that, but the idea is still there. This is a composable TypeAHead, and the principles of delegation of responsibility are essential to making this TypeAHead composable. So anything that you can get rid of. It's like the minimalist principle applied to writing code. So if you can possibly get rid of it, push it away out of your responsibility. And you'll find that making these very simple, pure components, you have much more powerful components. This is not even close to possible with any TypeAHead that I've ever used off the shelf before. Like the Twitter TypeAHead, does anybody have experience with the plugin, jQuery plugin, Twitter TypeAHead? Some, yeah. Yeah, there's 2 different config objects that you pass into that thing. And each one has like 50 different options that you can use. And it still will always play the same freaking song. That's not what you want. All right. I have a slide to end this with, if anybody has any questions. Okay, first of all of that stuff that I just showed is on GitHub. That's where it is if you're interested in exploring it. It's not production ready. There's a lot of stuff that's not there. I mentioned accessibility at the beginning, and that's essential, and that is built into the TypeAHead. I didn't have enough time or expertise to make that work, but I did, in getting ready for the talk, test it in Safari, and it actually does work with accessibility. But if you're interested, go ahead, take a look at it, fork it, star it, whatever. All right, any questions? Stumped you. Yes? Yeah. Okay, so the question, as I understand it, is what if the user wants to change the font color in the input?
Yeah, or something in the subcomponent.
So if it's a style, I'll show you. I kind of skipped over this a little bit, but all of the styles are defined here, and they are all independent of the component. So you would define your own styles. This component would be delivered completely without styles. So, and the reason is I don't want a config option or a parameter or a prop in my TypeAHead input for color and font weight and everything else. I don't want to recreate CSS. I'm just going to make it completely unstyled so you don't have to override anything. And maybe you can even have default styles that you can optionally opt into. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, but I'm sorry, I framed the question wrong. You say not for input, but for a subcomponent, I have a label, and the user can put the text of the label.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have an example where I had a component which was a checkbox, and the user would give the name.
Right.
Each of the labels, and how it's a subcomponent, it's not the main component.
Right, and so that's the reason. That the question is, if you have a subcomponent that you need to customize, how do you handle that? Is that right? Okay, so that is the reason that all of the subcomponents are exposed. So you have the TypeAHead component on the outside, and then you have the TypeAHead input, and you can add a placeholder there. Instead of adding a placeholder prop to the TypeAHead, that doesn't make as much sense because it's really a placeholder on the input. And then, let's see, I should show, where am I rendering the results? Okay. So I should be able to put in whatever I want. There inside of a subcomponent. And that way, I don't have to create, so that there you can see yay for subcomponents in every component. I don't have to create a prop or a config option. I can just allow the user to compose whatever they need, however they need it.
And this parameter would be on the main component.
No. No, you would put it inside of the subcomponent. There's actually no parameters on the main component in this example.
So if the user puts a parameter in the main component, is there a way that the subcomponents can use those?
Yes, but usually you want to put them on the subcomponents to maintain a pure and composable experience. Do you have any other questions? Yeah.
I like this. I think it's important to point out that this is not the plugin pattern. So if you're looking for something that is, drop it in and go, something like this is not going to facilitate that. But it is going to give you expressive power to customize and do, what you probably need to do that the author of your library may not have thought of. But it's not as easy as just dropping it and using it and going.
No, I completely agree. This was not exactly a question, more of a comment, I would say. But the comment was, you can't just drop it in and go. You have to do some work. In my experience, the plugin pattern always requires a significant amount of work as well. You drop it in, it doesn't do what you want it to do. You have to play with all the configs, and eventually you get it to work the way you want it to. Occasionally, there's a plugin that you actually plug in and it just works. But I find that this pattern is a bit more usable, and it gets you to the place you want to be with less pain. But it's definitely true. Right off the bat, you have to do more work. I think it just doesn't lie about how much work you have to do. Any other questions? I don't think there are any more. I've stumped them. Oh, yes, one more. How old am I? That's a great question. I'm 31. Yeah, okay. That was a good last question. Thanks.